Hello, my name is Walter Thompson and welcome to Soundpainting Lesson number 1. Briefly, let me explain how this works. I'm going to speak with you about certain aspects of the sound painting language, and then it's going to cut from my talking to you directly to a recording that was done in 2015 at the Soundpainting Think Tank in Paris, showing examples of the basic language. And so the combination of my speaking with you and then cutting to the recording is how this lesson is going to work. So to get started, I'll explain to you what sound painting is. Sound painting is a multidisciplinary, live composing sign language. It's for composing in real time. The sound painter uses a sign language as opposed to writing something down as we do in more traditional composition or choreographing something or writing a play. It's all done in real time using a sign language. I first created sound, just a little brief history. If you want to know more about the history of sound painting, you could go to soundpainting.com and read about the history. But to just let you know, I created sound painting in 1974. I created it in the moment during a concert in Woodstock, New York, where I had the desire and the need to communicate with my group during a performance. So during the performance, I simply made up a few signs. I said, you, long tone, play. And it worked. I made up a few signs after that, and that was the birth of sound painting 42 years ago. Again, you can read about that more on soundpainting.com. So this lesson will start section 1. I'll speak with you a bit about the gestures and about how sound painting works, and then we'll cut to the recording of that I'm performing the gestures, giving the gestures, and giving you examples of the gestures with an orchestra. This particular lesson is multidisciplinary. We're sort of mainly focusing on sound, but you'll see in the video that there are also actors and dancers, and I'll address that also. So let's get started. Sound painting works with a syntax, and the syntax, like any language, any spoken language, we have a syntax for structuring the language. So the syntax of sound painting is who, what, how, when. So who, what, how, when comprises the sound painting syntax. So for example, who, the who gestures, identifying who, like the whole group, or the rest of the group, or group 1, group 2, strings, brass, woodwinds, singers, electronics, percussion, actors, dancers, visual artists. We'll address that later about the visual artist. Musicians, all musicians. So those are the basic who gestures. There are a few more, but those are the ones that'll suffice for now. So who, the first part of the syntax, and then what, followed by how, then when. So who, what. What, for example, a long tone. What, pointillism. What, minimalism. What, laugh. What, speak. What, air sounds. What, play can't play. What, coming and going to, etc., etc., etc. There are more than 1,500 signs in this language, and there's hundreds of what gestures. So who, what, and then how. And in this first lesson, we're going to just deal with 2 how gestures. Pianissimo to fortissimo. You can sign these on either side, slowly or slow tempo. This is tempo fader. Notice my hand is like this for tempo and like this, closed fist, very important, closed fist for the volume fader. Or when it concerns dance, it's the amplitude fader, how much space you take. Little space, take a little bit, small amount of space, and now take a lot of space with whatever the desired content is, whatever the content is given by the sound painter. So slowly up to very rapidly, medium tempo, slow tempo, fast tempo, etc. And these can be signed on either side. As I was saying, it doesn't matter. It's a good idea to practice, to have the ability to do them very fluidly on either side. I think a good sound painter is someone who develops a high level, is ambidextrous. So the capacity of working with both sides of the body. So that represents the sound painting syntax. Who, what, how, when. So those are the hows. Who, what, how. Let me get up. I'm forgetting the when, but let me show you the when. So who, what, how. Who, whole group. What, pianissimo. How. Wait. Who, what, long tone. How, pianissimo. And now the go gestures are play. It's immediate. Immediate. You say snap. Snap, that's the ictus, that's when to start. You start immediately at the end of my hands. Progressively, beginning, coming into the composition progressively, that means the performer chooses to enter the composition between 1 to 5 seconds. His or her choice, when to begin the content of the sound painter. And exit slowly. So this one is enter slowly, to progressively come in, or the name of the gesture is enter slowly, and this is exit slowly, to leave the composition, to go out of the composition between 1 to 5 seconds. Again, the choice of the performer. So we have a staggered entrance, or a staggered exit, or we have an exact entrance, or an exact exit, where we stop the piece. And again, get used to doing these on either side. Because I have some experience. I've had the experience of like sound painting in rehearsal for many hours every day. And earlier on, I would always just do this on one side. And it didn't take long before there was a serious pain. So try to get used to moving around. Sound painting is very physical. It's very physical language, so you want to be able to do gestures on both sides. Make sure you have the capacity to do them on both sides. So that's the syntax. Who, whole group. What, long tone. How, pianissimo. When, or off, or slowly exit. The ways of beginning the content or asking the performers to exit the content. So, who, what, how, when comprises the sound painting syntax. We use as the sound painter, we use 4 imaginary spatial regions. What does that mean? Well, I use neutral. So my feet are together. You can't see my feet, but they're together. Close together, not like super close, but they're close together in a relaxed manner. One's not in front of the other. They're side by side. And I'm establishing a position of neutral. Very important. And most of the time you sign the who, the what, and the how in neutral. And then to begin that, to ask the orchestra to begin the content of a long tone in this case, I would give a play gesture, and they come in right at the end of my hands. Immediately they come in. And I'm moving forward into an imaginary box. So this second imaginary spatial region is what we call the box. So neutral, the box for initiating the gestures. neutral for most of the phrase, and then again the box. You lunge forward with one leg. And get used to lunging, changing legs, or you'll have the same problem. Your leg will get sore from that lunging only on one side for hour after hour. So, neutral, the box. The box is like the flow of the composition right in front of you. And neutral is like being on the bank of the river. You're outside the composition. You're outside of it. And you're in the composition now. Okay, so neutral and the box. And now we use an imaginary staff, like a grand staff, the musician's grand staff, right? Something that's up here, kind of out of the camera range, but up here is high. So if I went whole group and I put a long tone way up here, it's high. It's a high, it's a very high long tone in range. It's a medium long tone. It's a low long tone. So high, middle, low, in other words. If we're talking about movement, working with dancers, this would indicate fast. This is medium tempo, and this is slow tempo. We'll get to that, what that means for dancers. Okay, so again, to reiterate, neutral, the box, the four imaginary spatial regions, and then the imaginary staff. Neutral, the box, and the imaginary staff. And the last one, the fourth spatial region, is the imaginary stage for indicating where on the stage to perform for the actors or dancers or for anybody to move to that area on the stage or to use that space on the stage. Okay, so the fourth imaginary spatial region, again, just to reiterate, we had neutral, the box, and the imaginary staff. We don't use the hand to sign it, it's just to indicate this is what it is in front of me. Now we have the imaginary stage is the fourth imaginary spatial region. So stage left, my hand is tucked in my side like this. My elbow is tucked in like this. So stage left, stage right, upstage, mid-stage, downstage. Now you'll see that this is actually my right side, and this is my left side, but I'm saying stage left, stage right. Now this is the perspective of the performer, facing the public. That's where this terminology comes from. Stage left, stage right, upstage, up. The stages years ago, back in the days of Shakespeare used to actually go up, like slant up. So that's why it's called upstage, mid-stage, and downstage, down at the bottom of the stage. So up, middle, down. So again, stage left, stage right, up, middle, down. It's very important to use the syntax correctly and to use these imaginary regions correctly, to really use them. This is communication. Sound painting is communication with your group. You're composing in real time using a sign language. You haven't given them notated music or choreography or text for a play. It's done in real time. Nothing is planned ahead of time. It's done in the moment. Sound painting is collaborative in the sense that the sound painter, he or she initiates the phrase, listens to the results, watches, looks around if it's multidisciplinary, looks and listens, and then makes a decision about what to do next. And the composition progresses in that way. Live composing, unpredictable. So having said that, you'll see this in the first section before we jump to this, to the recording. You'll see at times that I don't use the how gesture. I don't use this. And I don't use the dynamic fader. and or it's what's called a volume fader in sound painting. I don't use it, and then that gives me a level of risk. If I go whole group long tone and there's no volume fader, then the performer chooses which volume, which dynamic they want. Okay, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that's how it works. It's really important you understand that sound painting works with the known and the unknown. The sound painter takes a lot of risk in order to create the flow in the composition, in order to create the composition. So let's talk quickly about the gestures that you're going to see in section 1. We're going to see a long tone, and the musicians choose anywhere, musicians and actors choose anywhere in their mid-range, if it's signed mid-range, choose a long tone, basically within the mid-range of their instrument, and perform it and don't change it. It's static, there's no development. An actor is going to choose, in order to generate the long tone, we'll think of a word, so kind of using a word to generate the long tone. What does that mean? If I'm an actor and the sound painter assigns a long tone to me, and and then given the play gesture, maybe I do something like Now underneath that long tone, I thought of a word in order to generate that sound. And so the word that I thought of, there's a way to expose that word later, but we'll get to that. But the word that I thought of to generate the sound in order to differentiate me between a singer and an actor, what the different sound is between an actor and a singer, the actor is not singing, the word that I chose to use was mud. So I thought, mud, you know, but so a musician, obviously, singer, saxophonist, flutist is going to play a long sound and maintain it. An actor is going to use a word to generate it. A dancer in the mid-range is going to do medium, fast, sustained movement. Movements that's sustained. Doesn't have to be just one side. It can transfer. It can go wherever it wants to go. But it's sustained. There's no accent to the movement. It's fluid. It is a sustained movement. For a dancer, this is amplitude. So if it's down here, the long tone is signed down here by the sound painter, then the dancer is going to keep the movement close to the body. And if it's going up here, then you'll see the dancers take up more space. This is amplitude. So less space, more space. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump to the recording, and I will see you in the next section. Okay, on to section 2 of lesson 1. You could see that in the when offering a long tone, you could see that the dancers were in their chairs and didn't get up and dance around in the space. That would be something that the sound painter would sign. Also, when given a long tone, when working with sound, musicians or actors, the result is going to be a cluster of sound. It's not necessarily going to be, for musicians, we're not going to come up with like a C major triad or a D major triad. spread out through the group. And of course, there's ways to sign that, but that's much further along in sound painting. So now in section 2, we're going to work with pointillism. And let me just show you something I just drew. It's, well, a long tone, if you were to just, draw a long line on a white wall, like just a long line, if I took a paintbrush and put a long line here, you would probably understand that to be a long sound, or dancers to be a long gesture, So pointillism is kind of the opposite. Pointillism is very irregular, sputtering, like dropping, 500 pennies down 5 flights of stairs. It's very unlikely the pennies are going to bounce down together, ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. Not going to happen. So pointillism, I have a little drawing. Pointillism, you see the long tone underneath and the pointillism on top. Pointillism is very irregular, sputtering, and the result should be a collective result. So it can, depending upon each sound painter, it can be very busy collectively, or it could be, you could, ask the performers to play less. And of course there are modifiers and, gestures for calling for more space, but right now we'll just leave it like that. So pointillism is irregular. The dancers are kind of moving in a very irregular sort of way, and musicians, etc. Actors are speaking. What do you mean? I just. So it's that. After pointillism, you're going to see scanning. Now, let me just stand up. With scanning, the preparation is in neutral. So, like whole group scanning, I put my arm out at the side, and then you're going to see that I'm stepping forward to scan. And then I can also use both arms and move them at different speeds. So what is scanning? What is scanning? Scanning is, it's like when my arm lines up with the performer, like if you're in the group and my arm lines up with you, you play the moment my arm lines up with you, the sound painter's arm lines up. You play anything that you want. Anything. Each time my arm passes by, you could play the same thing if you want, or you could play something new. Or you could copy something from somebody else in the group. So it's quite open as to what you do. Now, if the sound painter stays on somebody for any length of time, you would develop your material very slow. Take the first 3 seconds of what you're performing, whether it be sound or movement, and excuse me, and develop that very slowly. That's the rate of development. It's very, very slow development. Like if I'm an actor and I scan myself and I stop on myself, really? Really? So I take this really, and I just kind of work off of that and develop that very slowly till it moves to a little bit to something else, and then I develop that. Another gesture that you're going to see is width, and that's a way to, after I've shown pointillism, I can say use the width gesture to modify a scan. So scan with pointillism. And then when I scan by, I'm asking specifically for pointillism. It's no longer play what you want. It's at this point, it's pointillism. So the width gesture is, we'll deal with that more later, but it's a very important gesture in sound painting, allowing you, the composer, the sound painter, to modify the gesture. And there's many, hundreds and hundreds of examples of how to use the width gesture. After scanning with pointillism, in order to, like if I'm scanning with pointillism and I'm scanning by and doing pointillism, in order to go back to normal standard scanning, where you can choose what you want to do, you just simply say whole group, and the whole group gesture will cancel the previous scan. So you say whole group scanning, move into the box and scan. And that will be the standard scanning of do anything you want when lined up as my arm passes by. Challenge the sound painter, give him or her material. Make it the same every time, change it the next time, make it soft, make it loud. You know, if it hasn't been modified in some kind of way, then you choose what to do with the scanning arm when it passes by. Now the last gesture in section 2, then the end of lesson 1, is point to point. So you're going to see how I do it. I prepare like this and I step in the box and I point. Now point to point is like scanning. It's more direct. So when I point at the performer, or the sound painter is pointing at the performer, he or she plays, I take my hand away, they stop. What you perform is the same, in a sense, it's the same conceptually as scanning. Choose anything you want when I'm pointing at you and perform it within your discipline. By default, within your discipline, take my hand away. You can go back to the same thing if you want, even pick up where you left off. Or you could give something new. But just like scanning, point to point has a development rate. It's a very slow development. So if I keep pointing at a performer, then this performer would develop, take the first 3 seconds of what they're doing, more or less 3 seconds, and develop that as their motif, just like you do in scanning. So it's just to let you know, we have three rates of development in sound painting, and scanning and point to point are development rate 1. What you do, how you develop your material. It's not free improvisation, it's not full-blown improvisation with what you offer. It's a slow development rate of the first 3 seconds of what you're offering. Now the last thing I'll say about scanning and point to point is that they are search gestures. If the sound painter says whole group long tone, play, pitch up, pitch down, and then whole group off. Now maybe I'm going to use scanning to go searching for something to use for the next part of my composition. Or maybe I'm going to use point to point to search for something. Oh, I like this, that's nice, but I won't stay on it too long. I like that. Oh, I really like that, And then I might give the continue gesture, etc. And we'll deal with that later, how that works. So scanning and point to point are search gestures. And they're also used to shape the composition in this manner also. Besides just searching, it's another way to shape the composition without deciding to ask somebody to continue with in point to point, or scanning to ask for a continue. It's also a way to shape the composition and then move on to another gesture. So now, that's it. And also you see a little girl running, and that's my daughter, Kaylee. And my beautiful daughter, she was running through the performance. So see you at the end of this next section 2. I'll have a few more words to say, and that will be the end of this lesson.
autre fois, une autre.
Wow, it's so... Oh. But you told me.
Okay, so this is going to wrap it up for lesson 1. These sound painting lessons are, there's probably going to be about 6 or 7 or 8 or maybe more. But I'm first going to deal with what we call the basic level 1 language. There's nothing really basic about it, just no better name for it. So level 1 gestures, which are about 40 to 50, depending upon if it's a single or multidisciplinary group. So in the last section with the orchestra, with the point-to-point and scanning, you could see in the point-to-point, the last part of the video, the example with the orchestra, that I was pointing and getting very different responses from people. So that's what you're looking for as the sound painter. When you teach these gestures to your group for the first time, take your time as a composer with this language to just work with long tones, to get people comfortable with offering all kinds of long tones, not just one note at the same time. Even if it's in the mid-range like this, and you keep saying, whole group, long tone, play, and you stay in the same range each time, it's up to the performers to offer something different. If they want to do the same long tone a couple of times in a row, that's okay, but the challenge is to come up with another way to play that long tone, or to move that long tone. Challenge yourself as a performer to find other ways to make offers for the gesture. Other types of offers is what I mean. And you saw that in the point-to-point in the last part of the work with the orchestra. When you first learn sound painting, it's a great idea as the composer to get in front of the mirror and practice the gestures. So your volume faders don't look like this, and your tempo doesn't look like that, and your whole group doesn't look like this. This is a sign language, so the more clarity, with the gestures, it's communication with the group, and the more clarity, the more exact you are with the signs, the better the results. It's like when speaking, if I was to speak with you and just mumble, you would have no idea what I'm saying. So it's really important to be clear with the signs. Get in front of the mirror like a dancer or like a conductor and practice each one of those gestures. Practice them very, very, very carefully. So that's, no, I have a few more things to say. That's not it for now. When you first begin composing with sound painting, you're doing, as far as the type of composition, it's really collage form composition. You begin by offering this content, and then this one, and then that one, and then this one. It's very much conceptually like a collage, like a visual collage. And that's the easiest way to begin as a composer with sound painting. One of the really important things to remember when you're speaking to your group, and there's no such thing as a mistake, right? So if I say whole group long tone play, and you come in playing pointillism just by accident, you keep playing pointillism. You don't change to the long tone. That causes a weakness in the composition. Wrong and strong with what you offer. When in doubt, don't lay out. If you're not sure what you're doing, keep playing. You never stop as a performer unless you see a sign that says stop or slowly exit. You never stop. You're always correct. Of course, the only mistake, if there since I said there's no such thing as a mistake, but the only true mistake would be stopping when you make a mistake. So if you make a mistake, keep going. It's often a wonderful gift for the sound painter to work with. Some of my most interesting directions in my compositions come from the error, the mistake. Profit by it. It's great. Well, okay, that's the end of lesson 1, and I'll see you for lesson 2.